And I look up and, there's Wayne looking right at me. And he's like, "Are you okay, kid?" And I'm like, "Yes, Mr. Gretzky." And he just checked me. He's like, "Come on." He's like, "Kid." He's like, "Call me Wayne."
Dave Bolger here, and welcome to Had I Known, an exploration of the Hamilton College experience. This week's guest is Guy Hebert, class of 1989. Quite a week this week for the current students. Best of luck as they all return to campus. Been wild looking at pictures on social media of testing tents, using the squash courts for testing facilities. It's surreal. And I wish all the students well as they make their return, and I hope it is as normal of a college experience as can possibly be for what I'm sure is a nerve-wracking time for those students. We'd love to hear from some current students about this return to campus. Drop us a line, hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Again, hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Drop us a line, let us know how it's going. We'd love to keep those who are not on campus up to date on how things are going for you all. And if you are a current student or a parent of any student going back to school in the fall, I want to tell you about this week's sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by Ethos. Ethos is a brand aligning business with activism. It was started, as a matter of fact, by a Hamilton alum who had the goal of empowering students to raise awareness for key social issues and foster change. This year, when you go back to school, make the decision to purchase your notebooks, backpacks, and computer cases from Ethos. For every purchase you make, they donate a notebook to an underserved school. And they also donate 10% of proceeds to charities like the NAACP LDF, Pride Foundation, Vote.org, and much more. By supporting Ethos, you can rest assured knowing that you will be supporting a company that is concerned with making a positive difference in the community. Ethos is redefining the standard that businesses are held to by aligning its operations with social activism. Their simple, minimalist designs include high-performance materials that allow you to showcase the causes that you support, all at affordable prices. Visit their website at ethosmaterials.com. That's ethosmaterials.com. Use the code WELCOME20 to get 20% off your first purchase. And don't forget to check them out on Instagram at ethos_materials. That's ethos_materials. To keep up on all their latest products. So this fall, make the decision to support Ethos, who are aligning business with activism. All right, let's get into this week's show. So when I was a student at Hamilton, one of my all-time favorite memories, and something I enjoyed more than just about everything else, was co-hosting a weekly sports talk show with 3 other friends. And by my senior year, I was convinced that I was on my way to being a professional, and that's what I wanted to do. I was going to give Mike and the Mad Dog in New York a run for their money by creating my own sports talk show. And one of the pipe dreams of that time on the radio was, boy, wouldn't it be amazing to get NHL goalie Guy Hebert to be a guest on the show? Now, this was early days of the internet, early days of email, and it was also a time in the 90s when we students at Hamilton weren't quite the caliber of the current student body, so we never really did anything to try and get Guy on the show, but it was always a pipe dream to be able to talk to a Hamilton grad turned professional athlete. But here we are, 20-plus years later, and I finally snagged him as a guest on a radio show. It was an absolute pleasure and honor to talk to Guy Hebert, a legendary Hamilton athlete. The first athlete to have their jersey retired in the Sage Rink was something that he is immensely proud of and honored to have. Now, the funny thing about this conversation is it was recorded earlier this week, just as the playoffs were getting underway. In fact, Game 1 of the Columbus-Tampa game was still being played. And Guy was nice enough to pull himself away from that game, I think, at the end of the third overtime. We went through our entire conversation, went back, and all I kept thinking about was, God, if I make him miss some sort of epic overtime game, I'm never going to live this down. And luckily enough, they were into the fifth overtime when we finished the conversation, and he did get to go see the end of the game. And I texted him and said, well, you'll never forget the guy who made you miss most of a 5 overtime thriller. But it was certainly fun and somewhat of a dream come true for me to talk to Guy as the guy who was the sports director of this station many years ago and had a pipe dream of talking to the Hamilton legend and was able to finally pull it off. And I'm thankful we did, because this was a fun one. He's a great guy. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Guy Hebert, class of 1989.
Well, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. It's always great to reminisce about the good old days.
Yeah. Although, what's up with this punk kid breaking all your records? Evan, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his last name.
You know what? I the best I know is Beitenheis.
Yeah.
I'm partly to blame because I helped recruit him.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
Great kid. Had a nice relationship with him while he was at school, and following in his pro career now. And he's a really good goalie. So I actually tried to get the Ducks to look at him. And
the
department take a look at him. And
he's in the Islanders system, right?
He's in the Islanders. Yeah. Unfortunately, out here, Anaheim had just a ton of goalies, and they're like, we don't need another guy.
Yeah.
But I tried hard for him.
Well, that's good. Well, as a Hamilton sports aficionado, thank you for bringing him. That's great. How's it going for you? How's COVID life treating you?
Good. We have a daughter who just graduated from Hobart and William Smith.
Okay.
She spent her last semester here doing, like most kids were doing it, remote learning, and no graduation, no virtual graduation. They tried to actually postpone it until August. And by the time it was July, they're like, we're just going to send your diploma in the mail. We'll do it. Yeah. They said, we'll do it in a year from now. Yeah. So, but selfishly, it's nice to have her home. I think my wife and I, she's the only child, so it's nice to have her back. And, but like everybody, just kind of grinding through it. And I've got a lot of free time because the Ducks didn't make this playoff run.
Right.
And it doesn't look like the season will start until next December.
Is that what they're saying?
That's the thought process right now. It'll probably take a couple months for them to get through this playoffs right now. Probably not until, they're estimating end of September, maybe even as long as October. And so they've got to give the guys just a little bit of a break before cranking it back up. So,
well, knock wood, it seems like the NHL at least figured some things out, because at least as it relates to some other sports, they're, knock wood, no cases, and things are moving along pretty well. So it's going well for the NHL, which is great.
It is. And I was just watching the end of the third overtime between Columbus and Tampa Bay, and now it's going to go into the fourth overtime. So if people are starved for NHL hockey or sports in general, what a great opportunity for the NHL to take advantage and garner some new support from fans who might not be willing to watch hockey, especially in August right now.
Yeah, it's true. Even the most casual sports fan will say, well, playoff hockey is still great. And to have it at a time now when people are starved for sports and when baseball is kind of reeling a little bit, it's a good opportunity for the league. And they're doing a great job.
They have. They've always been the redheaded stepchild of the sports, the major sports. And they actually got this one right. They took their time. They did their due diligence. They selected 2 great hub cities. And not that it might be better for U.S., fans to watch them in whether the hub city was New York or Vegas or Anaheim, LA, wherever. But, having them in the 2 great markets in Canada is really, I think, great. Although, of course, Toronto loses and so does Edmonton. So go figure.
If you were still playing, would you be concerned at all about what's going on?
I think there would always be some level of concern, but I think the fact that, families aren't traveling in and out of the bubble, nobody's coming in. And I think so you can kind of feel somewhat safe that, the guys are there, they're being well taken care of by their own medical personnel. And then, it's just the amount of testing that they're going through. If someone gets it, they're going to know right away. It's not going to, kind of fester for, a week and then have multiple guys. So, hopefully, I think the guys see that maybe it's the lure of winning the Stanley Cup. It is such a great time of year, and the guys want to be able to hoist that thing one time in their career. And I think they're willing to put everything on the back burner, families included, to be able to go out there and have this opportunity. And it's amazing because with that 4 months off, I looked at the lineups and I'm like, I wouldn't want to play Chicago. I don't want to play Carolina. I don't want to play Columbus. I mean, there's a handful of teams where, that 4 months, I mean, they're ready to go. Everybody's healthy, and teams that were in first, like Boston, I mean, they just kind of muddled their way through this round robin, and they better be ready to go tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's true. It's the typical Stanley Cup runs are always who's healthy and who can survive the grind. So coming in fresh, it does seem like there are a lot of stacked teams. I was going to ask you who's going to win this thing.
I would say the front runners are Tampa and Boston. St. Louis could make another run. I think that the round robin kind of put a little, an interesting twist in it all to reseed those four teams in the East and the West. And I think, Boston kind of lollygagged their way, I think, to maybe third. And, I don't want to play Carolina right now. I mean, they're just, right. Same as this past season and the season before, they're just like a little bit of a team of destiny and never want to stop. But, really anybody, if there's a year anybody can win this, I think this is the year. So don't be surprised if maybe like somebody like the Blue Jackets make it to the finals.
Okay.
We'll see.
Right.
We'll see if they pull it out. I had it on that TV behind me.
Well, I'm sorry to take you away from it. I wish I'll try to put it up in the background here for you.
That's right. I got my phone right here.
All right, good. Okay. I'll understand if you're distracted. Well, as a Rangers fan, I guess, I was bummed when they got bounced right away, but then the fortunes turned around pretty quickly for them this week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had spent a little time at the end.
I know. Hey, as a Rangers fan, a Hamilton Gray Ranger fan, that when I saw they signed you, I was excited as could be, man. I was happy.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great experience. It was short because I decided to, hang them up after that season. But, what an experience to be a New York Ranger playing in Madison Square Garden, many times as a visitor, but, play games as a Ranger right there was really, really pretty special. And actually got to stop Mario Lemieux on a breakaway in my first home game with the Rangers against the Penguins. And
that's awesome.
It was in overtime. So it was pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of great memories in my career, but it was one of those things where all of a sudden you get the chance from the Ranger fans of, Guy, and it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That building is as special as everyone says it is?
It really is. I mean, it's a very intimidating place to play as, for me, for many years to come in. And it's, when they talk about like the blue section up in kind of in the rafters, I mean, they're not joking around. It gets a little rough and tumble up there.
It does. I've sat up there. I know.
Yes. Okay. So, so as a visiting goaltender, most of my time, they're not that kind. That's the best way I can put it politically.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, not the most PC chants always coming out of the Blue Cedars.
Nope. But when I was there, they loved me, so that was nice. The nice little turnaround.
And I was in looking back, I didn't realize this, but the year you played there was the year they drafted Lundqvist. So it was kind of an interesting sort of moment in that team's history.
Yeah, it was kind of the turning point. Mike Richter is a really good friend of mine, and Mike had blew out another one of his knees, and Kirk McLean was there as the backup, and I knew Kirk for a lot of years playing against him in Vancouver, and it's a long sordid story, but I had no trade clause, so I couldn't be moved from Anaheim. I couldn't get traded, but you could be moved through something called waivers, which I never thought in a million years of my career I'd ever put on waivers, but it was a way to kind of move me. So I was fortunate to get picked up the Rangers. Mike had just gotten injured, and I rolled in there and played, 16 or 18 games or something like that at the end of the season. And, but I mean, it was an all-star cast of players. I mean, I got there and I'm like, how are we not good? I mean, I played with Brian Leach on the Olympic team and the World Cup teams, and Messier was there as the captain, and you had Nedved. I mean, you had all these great players, and I'm like, I understand why I'm struggling in Anaheim, because we have Slani in Korea, and that's it. And but you guys have an all-star roster, so it was weird that they were underachievers at the time, but maybe living in Manhattan that can do to you. There's a little bit too much. Good nightlife or whatever.
Some options there.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I think people don't think about as it relates to professional athletes, right? So for you, you're working a job in Anaheim, and then you wake up one day and it's no longer that's not your job anymore, and then you got to go pick up and move somewhere else. People don't think about how that impacts athletes personally, I think. And if you have a family, you got to uproot your family, you get traded. And I think there's a lot of things about professional athletes, I think, that just completely get taken for granted or never thought of.
Yeah, I mean, being on the other side and kind of living that, it's like the worst day in the world is the final day of the trade deadline. I mean, there are guys that are just, they don't want to be around the rink, they just leave. You don't want to look at your phone, and that is a very difficult day because you might not even be on the trade block, but somebody might come in with an offer, and if fortunately for me, I didn't have to face that because of my no trade clauses that I was able to negotiate in. But it's a terrible time, and it affects the whole family and being uprooted and moving. And I mean, it's part of the job, it's part of what you sign up for, but it's not easy. And I always love it because even my family or my buddies would be like, hey, you guys just traded for this guy and whatever. I'm like, I just lost the best buddy. I'm glad to get this player from, Montreal in, but I just lost one of my best teammates and one of my best friends. And my wife just lost her best friend to, and you might not ever see him again,
right.
Except for maybe occasionally. So it's a difficult part of it, but, at the end of the day, no one really wants to hear anybody complain about, playing a sport for a living.
Sure.
The upside is too good to complain about some of those other things.
Sure. And then on that trade deadline talk, bringing in new players in a sport like hockey where things can get a little rough, frustrations with players on the other team can lead to some pretty gnarly altercations. You ever had a moment where a guy you hated on the other team ended up being your teammate?
For me, not so much. There were guys I didn't like very much as playing competitors. But a lot of times those are the guys you couldn't wait to have on your team.
You don't have to deal with them anymore.
Finally do it to somebody else, And,
right.
But I will say, the game has changed a lot where, a lot of the enforcer, position in the game is gone. And, but, during my entire career, I mean, it was a prominent role and guys played a big role on our team and other teams just trying to, it's whether changing the momentum of a game or sticking up for a teammate, kind of policing what was going on the ice. And it was always amazing how the enforcers, I mean, they'd get the tap on the shoulder, they'd go out and fight the other enforcer, they'd give it a slap on the butt, go to the penalty box. And then after the game, you'd be going out to the team bus, or if you were at home, you'd run into guys in the hallways. And those guys are a very small, distinctive club. And, they've fought each other since junior or college or even younger. And so the relationship between those guys was just always amazing to me because they laid it all on the line on the ice. And when the game was over, the guy's kissing that guy's wife, saying hello and saying hi to the kids. And pretty amazing that they can compartmentalize their job. And then when they got away from the ice, they were totally different people.
Well, I guess if that's just part of it, right? And that's just, it's understood that that's what it is. And your role on the team, especially back then, was that's what you did. And probably in many cases not, I mean, sure, it was personal for many, but many times it's not personal.
They got mad. They got mad.
Right. Of course.
They wanted to beat the hell out of the other guy. But, but when it was over, it was that mutual respect that always there were some guys out there, and I won't name names, but, there were guys who were such agitators that I'm not sure anybody liked them any part of the 24 hours in the day. But for the most part, the guys really had that mutual respect.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back. So how did you end up at
Tiny Hamilton College?
Tiny Hamilton College, yeah.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Troy, New York, which is my hometown. I always grew up in the shadow of RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and they had a great hockey program. And I kind of envisioned going there a lot of my youth and into high school. And it was an interesting process going through. I went to a place called LaSalle Institute right in Troy. It's the all boys Catholic military school, and I went there from 7th grade through 12th, and had a great opportunity to be recruited by a lot of great schools, Harvard, Dartmouth, Yale, RPI, and then a whole bunch of great smaller schools, Hamilton, Colby, Bowdoin, you run it down the line. All the NESCAC schools. And so it was great to have those options, but it was difficult when you started to look at the process, and I wish I could kind of go back and help educate myself, because there wasn't a lot of education on how to handle recruiting. And I had, some teachers at school who had played, some basketball in college when they were in college, and they kind of helped me prioritize, recruitment letters. I mean, now nobody gets a letter, or, but that's
Right.
really how they, you can only get letters up to a certain point in your recruitment process. And then at a certain age, you could finally get the phone call from the coach or the recruiter. But, Hamilton started recruiting me right away, and Phil Grady, and still to this day, I'm close with Coach Grady. And he made it a point where, he sold the education at Hamilton, first and foremost. He's like, whatever you do in life, when you walk out of this campus, that Hamilton degree is going to go a long way for whatever you'd like to do. Hockey, obviously going to a small Division II at the time school was a tough sell for him, because, looking at, everybody wants to play Division I. And, I was no different. I wanted to play Division I, felt I could play at that level. And, would I be kind of hurting myself with any sort of chance of playing beyond college by going to such a tiny Division II school? But a very, very long story. I came out to the campus, with a couple other recruits. There was a guy named Rob Ballou who played at Albany Academy. I grew up playing hockey with him the whole time he got recruited by Coach Grady. And there was a whole bunch of guys that he was trying to bring in freshman year that I knew well from playing against. And I said, if we all come here, I think we can change this program. And that's what Coach Grady was trying to do. He was trying to make it an elite program from, maybe guys going out the night before and maybe being a little hungover for the game the next day. And he wanted to make it really into a top flight program. And I'll never forget it. It was probably one of the moments that solidified that, besides me loving the campus, I felt like I could come in and make an impact right away athletically. And I knew the academics were great, but Coach Grady called me after a game they had played. I remember my parents handed me the telephone at, 11 o'clock at night, and Coach was just fit to be tied, because they had played a game and it was a perfect game and they lost. And he said, if you come here tomorrow, you're going to start in the game tomorrow night. And I said, well, I can't come there till next year, Coach. And he's like, no, he goes, you will make the difference. And, he was just so sincere and so honest about everything in the recruitment process that, Hamilton finally rose to the top. And, I just figured, hey, if I'm good enough, someone will find me no matter where I am. And that kind of, sealed the deal for me. And, I made my commitment to coach into Hamilton.
That's great. Coach Grady was always amazing. I covered the hockey team either for the newspaper or for the radio station when I was there in the late 90s. And man, he was always so generous with his time. If I was looking for advice, I had, other than covering it for the, student media, I had nothing to do with the team, but he would take his time to give me advice. He was the athletic representative overseeing all intramural sports, and I got involved with that because of him.
Yeah.
Wrote me amazing recommendation when I was looking for job. I mean, the guy was just so generous.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And when I had the opportunity to go back, maybe 2 years ago for the 100-year anniversary of hockey in Clinton and at Hamilton College, it was great. It was great to go back and see Coach. And he just starts spinning stories. And all of his former students and players, no matter how old we are now, are just, gathered around Coach listening to these stories. And he shares them, and it brings us back like we were there yesterday. So, Coach has done, a world of good for all of us student athletes at Hamilton, and certainly for anybody who's walked on that campus. He's always been, like I said, generous with his time and just passionate about, life and helping out the students and trying to get us to be men. And that was one of his big things. He's like, when you leave here, I want to make sure you're a man and not a boy anymore.
It's funny how when you have a coach in your life, they'll forever be coach to you, right? No matter how old you get, no matter how successful you become, that's always coach. Yeah. So funny. Was playing in the pros the dream going into Hamilton? Was that always in the back of your mind that's what the goal was?
Ever since I can remember, being a pretty good player as a young kid, and people would ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to play in the NHL. I want to be a hockey player. And people are like, okay, seriously, well, what would you like to do? And I said, no, that's my goal in life, and maybe I get there, maybe I don't, but I'm going to work as hard as I can to try to achieve it, and try to get opportunities along the way. And it's funny because a lot of people will ask were there defining moments and this and that, but it was always about trying to get the next opportunity, like, because you never know if you get another one. So when one's presented to you, like, you have to take advantage of it. Like, you can't be so and play in some tournament and expect to get another chance because of that, that play. So I always looked at any time I was invited to play in front of somebody or to play, any kind of USA hockey or A-House, summer leagues or anything. I always kind of looked at that as like, okay, that's my one chance to get my next chance. But, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I just always dreamt that I would be an NHL player someday. And I probably would have been pretty disappointed if I didn't get the opportunity to do it. If I got the opportunity and I failed, that was fine. And, St. Louis, by drafting me, certainly gave me that opportunity to at least show up and say, hey, this is what I can do.
So you said before you had the attitude of, if I'm good enough, someone will find me. And so that obviously happened, and it happened pretty fast. I mean, you got drafted early, didn't you? Were you a sophomore or something like that?
Yeah, I got drafted after my sophomore year, and I got to give props out to one of my teammates, Harry McCabe. So we were freshmen, and I had played against Harry. He grew up on Long Island, and we had played against each other for years and years as kids. And he was a great player. He was an All-American our senior year as well. And so it was the summer after our freshman year, and Harry was playing for New York Junior Rangers, ironically, in a thing called the Chowder Cup in Massachusetts. And again, another long story that's short is Mike Richter was the goaltender and had gotten injured in the National Sports Festival. And so they only had one goalie, and they said, hey, does anybody know a good goalie that can come and fill in for Mike Richter? And Harry goes, yeah, my goalie at Hamilton, this guy. We played against him our whole lives, whatever. And said, do you think you want to play? He goes, yeah, let's call him. So called me, and I was like, summer hockey? Yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything. And got an opportunity to play for New York Junior Rangers, and had a great tournament. Got MVP of the tournament, and the rest is history. And there were a lot of pro scouts at that tournament, and so I think that's really the first time that I had that opportunity to play in front of people that were really watching. And I got a lot of notoriety. I got a lot of compliments from the scouts that were there. They all thought I was at Hamilton, Ontario, not Hamilton College. They're like, you play for the Hamilton Tiger Cats? We don't know. And I said, no, I play at a place called Hamilton College. And so it was really interesting. But that was really, as I kind of said before, those were those opportunities where I figured, if I don't shine here, I'll never get another opportunity. So that really opened the door for the scouts to see me. They all came, sat in Coach Grady's little tiny office during that season. And I think, I know he says it was a thrill, but I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to see Coach Grady just peppering these scouts with all of his questions while he was there. And then so after that season, which was a really good season for all of us that year, I think that was I think we had 18 wins that year in my sophomore year, and kind of was really the turning of the tide of the program. And, unfortunately for me, St. Louis thought enough of me to draft me in that next draft.
So I've talked on this show with folks before about, people who get recruited on campus to go work in banks and on Wall Street, and how frustrating it was for those of us who weren't recruited to see them have this comfort, at least for a semester.
Yeah.
You're a sophomore getting drafted by an NHL franchise. Does that add to the pressure for the remainder of your time there? Or are you saying, I'm good now. I know what I'm doing after college?
Well, the funny thing about drafting, it's funny because basically they own your rights. And so now they do control your destiny. And just because you're drafted doesn't necessarily mean they're really ever going to want you. And if they don't want you, then you can be released and become a free agent. But, again, the way I looked at it was, I played my whole life to get to that point, to get drafted and have a place that I could hopefully have the opportunity to go to a training camp. And St. Louis was great. They kept tabs on me. And, it was weird because I was my senior year had finished, had a really good year. And I remember St. Louis calling me and saying, hey, we'd like for you to come play for our minor league team during your spring break. And I was like, I haven't been on the ice in over a month. And they said, well, no, we'll fly in. You can play a couple games, and we want to get a look at you. And I didn't even have an agent at this point. And I was like, okay, this does not seem like a great idea, because the minors are pretty tough. Haven't played in a month, and I'm going to fly to Peoria. They're going to stick me in a practice or two, let me play a game. And, I know I talked about getting that next opportunity, but I didn't think that was really to my benefit. So when I said, I just don't think I can do it, I want to finish my degree. I want to finish in 4 years. They came back and said, well, we'll sign you for the rest of the year. And so, all of a sudden I'm like, well, geez, I can have an opportunity to play for an extended period of time to really get, show them what I can do, and maybe get, be able to sign a long-term contract. But back then, a lot of 2 years plus an option year was pretty standard. So I was like, if I could lock up a place to play for 2 to 3 years, would be great. I didn't end up hiring an agent because I really didn't know what to do. And at the end of it, we talked with Ron Caron, who was the general manager of the St. Louis Blues, and explained to him, the amount of money it cost for my parents to send me to Hamilton, the amount of debt I incurred to go to Hamilton, and how important it was for myself and my family for me to be able to finish on time and get that degree. Mr. Caron stood by his word and said, totally understand. And he's like, I can't tell you not to finish your college. He says, we will be here for training camp next year, and you will be here. Wow. And he gave me that guarantee, which he stood by. And it was, it was nice to kind of check off the box of, walking out of Hamilton with that degree right in my hand, and then being able to go to training camp that next fall.
Is that the norm, would you say, or is that kind of an exception of the way things were back then?
Well, I think a lot of teams wanted to get free looks at kids, who they owned, through the draft process. And, there was more than one kid who went down there who went and played 2 games and never saw the light of day. So, I think, I was lucky, fortunate, probably made the right call to be able to just say, this is why I'm doing this. And, I'd love the opportunity just to come to training camp. Now, mind you, I went to training camp, but, no contract, no guarantee of anything, but just trying to survive day by day with the cuts. And, it was stressful. But, I was kind of in my glory thinking, I'm sitting next to, NHL goalies in the locker room, Brett Hull's shooting on me. Adam Oates was a friend of mine who played at RPI and was with the Blues. So, I at least knew one NHL player that was down there. So that kind of gave me a little bit of comfort. But, it was tough. It was tough to be living on the edge every single day, hoping that, you weren't being called into an office and sent home, or, worst case sent home, where next best case would be sent to the minors to their training camp.
Literally your dreams hanging on decisions that other people are making, but a pretty small body of work, really, right? If you're talking about training camp, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you go out and play in 1 or 2 periods or half a game in a game that they're having, for an inter squad, and you have a bad day. Sometimes those bad days were enough to, because you have 7 or 8 goalies in camp, and most of them are under contract. So it was, wow. It was certainly, but again, I embraced it. I loved it. I said, if I never get back to another training camp, I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can.
Did you notice the talent level change from,
Sure.
skating around the Sage Rink to showing up at an NHL training camp?
Yeah, everything was just, I trained for 1 week before I actually left for St. Louis. I went down to Boston and did this training camp that was just a few days before I was able to leave. And it kind of gave me a taste of the speed and how hard guys shot. And there's a lot of guys similar to my spot, or had played a year or so in the minors. So it was like a very quick introduction of what I might see. And, I think a lot of it is just, you get there and the adrenaline is pumping, and, your focus is there, and you want to prove, like, had a spread hole whipping shots by the other guys. I want to make sure I, at least stop them a couple times. And, but it was certainly an adjustment. And, but a lot of it's just self-belief. I always believed that, I could do that. And I believed that I was good enough and had the skill set, and things I certainly needed to work on coming from Hamilton to whatever level of pro I was going to be able to play, and make those adjustments over time. And, certainly there was a big learning curve, but it was great because, I showed them enough in, those inter squad scrimmages to be taken on the first road trip for the exhibition games. And I don't know if I was more excited because I was playing in the University of North Dakota's rink, because I was playing at University of North Dakota, or I was playing the Winnipeg Jets. It was just pretty surreal because I'm like, this is, phenomenal college hockey, one of the best programs, and I'm playing in their rink. And then I look down at the other end of the ice. I'm like, well, but I am playing the Winnipeg Jets. So, mind you, it's only exhibition, so nothing really counts. But, if you don't play well, you don't usually get a second chance. And that training camp went really well for me. They eventually signed me to Peoria and eventually earned the contract. So I was kind of, still bopping around without any guarantee of anything. But as long as they kept asking me to play somewhere, I felt like things were going in the right direction.
That's amazing. And then two seasons in the minors?
It was
year and a half,
season.
And a half?
So my second year, I kind of got up and down with St. Louis, which is always one of the greatest things. If you talk to anybody who's played in the minor leagues in any sport, when that phone rings in the coach's office, instantly someone's going, somebody's going up, so everybody, you get totally re-energized. And even if it's not you gets called up, you're like, they haven't forgotten about us down here. And so my first year was a great learning experience. Had great two goaltender partners. Curtis Joseph was one of them, who went on to have a great 19-year career. And another young guy, we're all the same age, a guy named Pat Jablonski, who played for a bunch of teams, but got a lot of NHL action as well once he left St. Louis. But so it was a great relationship between them, and getting a chance to get the taste of the NHL my second year was great. And then I really felt like I was prepared to be a full-time guy that next season, and unfortunately was able to get up there and kind of solidify my spot with, especially with Pat Jablonski got taken in the Tampa Bay draft for the Lightning. So kind of created that spot that I was trying to beat him out for. And, and it kind of worked out.
I thought it was almost poetic that in looking at some advanced statistic analysis that looked at, that compared players and who were most similar. And it had you and Cujo as very close in similarity scores. And it's something poetic about the guy you were, competing with and backing up ended up being, similar careers, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you can learn. I'm sure it's the same with quarterbacks, at all levels, college and pro. But, when you're that close with somebody, there's that healthy competitive relationship. But when you're only two goalies, there's a lot of times where, you cry on each other's shoulders, because no one really understands the position of goalie except for another goalie. And so, if he was struggling, I'd be like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. You talk to your goalie coach or whatever, but no one really knows except for the two of you. So yeah, that relationship was great from the get going, because the three of us with Pat were, literally the same exact age, coming from different routes to get to where we were. But that kind of friendly competition was great. And I learned a lot from Curtis. The way he played was probably a detriment to me at some points, because he loved to play really deep in the net, and he was great reflexes. And so you always want to be able to make the save that you're not supposed to. And I kind of learned from him, if you cheated a little bit deep, relied on your reflexes, that, when they went to that backdoor pass, that you really had a good chance of making that save. If you anticipated it correctly, and the guy made that pass, you could get over there. And if you were just too aggressive, which a lot of guys in that era were, who came way out and just said, that's not my man, so the shooter's my man, if he passes it, it's the defenseman's fault. So we were going into the psychological warfare of really, we just can't give up that goal, and we have to give ourselves a chance. So I learned that from him. And really it served me well in my career. Got beat a couple times sitting a little too deep, but sometimes you live with that one.
And then in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine you'd end up one of the true iconic faces of a franchise?
No. And, it's so funny to try to, kind of recant all the stuff that happened in my career. And there's too many, great things that sometimes I forget some of them. But, it was funny because, when we knew that the two expansion teams were coming up, so you're going to have Florida and Anaheim at the same time. And, I felt like I was pushing Curtis enough in St. Louis where, I felt like I should play more. And I certainly accepted my role as the backup. And, but if you're backup you should never be happy being the backup. And they understood that. But we all joked about me going to Anaheim. Cujo was like, hey, you're going to paint a big yellow bill on your mask if you get taken by Anaheim. And, and we never really talked about, and even with my family, never really talked about Florida, never really talked about going to the Florida Panthers, kind of ironically. And then I know when the draft was coming up, Mr. Caron, who was still the GM of St. Louis, spoke to me and said, we want to keep you, but we don't think we can. He says, we're going to try to do some, coercing by offering, a pick or a player so that one of the teams won't take you, but there's no guarantee. And I got a call the morning of the draft, and Mr. Cron said, okay, we've talked to both teams. You're on their board. So if one doesn't pick you, the other one's going to grab you. And he's like, we wish you all the best. If it doesn't happen, we're certainly going to welcome you with open arms, but kind of be prepared to be going somewhere else. And I said, well, thanks for the heads up. And not much later, I got a phone call saying that Anaheim had picked me, and was really, another great opportunity in my career, just to have a chance to start fresh somewhere, not, battle it out with a couple other goaltenders, but not having that, Curtis Joseph, a real supplanted number one guy that you had to try to unseed. And so it worked out great. And as you can see, I'm still living in Southern California. It's been a great place for the last, 20 something years.
The weather's a little bit better than upstate New York.
It is. All I have to think about is, cold days at Hamilton College, walking across campus, trying to get to Sage Rink. And, when I go out here with shorts on and complain sometimes it's too hot, that, I check myself.
I've grown up and lived in the Northeast, and then my family and I moved to Southern California for a couple of years, and then we moved back east. And the first winter when I went outside, and it's so cold it hurts. I said, why do we live in a place that causes physical pain when you go outside? What is wrong with us? We were living in the best place on earth.
Yeah. No, it's been hard. It's been hard to think about leaving. And then our daughter, was, she's, we used to go back east every summer. We had a place on Lake George. So we would go back every year. It was great to decompress. My family and my wife's family, both back there. My wife, Sarah, is a Hamilton alum as well. She was my same grade. So we met at school and dated there, and then made the long distance thing work as best we could. And then eventually got married in the chapel at Hamilton, which is great. So, Hamilton certainly has been a very big part of our lives collectively. And, but our daughter decided to go to Hobart and William Smith.
She broke the chain.
She did. She saw too many pictures of me up around campus and said, I just don't think I can do this. And you and Mom are going to be talking about a party at Carnegie. And I'm going to be saying, no, you don't go here anymore. This is about me. So I think she chose wisely. She had a great experience, just down the road.
That's very funny. You wanted to go back and start throwing oranges on the ice, I know.
It's one of the greatest rivalry things, wait, that first goal of the season. And, I'm sure over time it's become a liability. And, I know that they were sneaking in tennis balls because couldn't get oranges in the cafeteria, and Commons would specifically not have any fruit out before our first home game.
Yep. People, I would do the games on the radio, and we would smuggle them into the radio equipment. I'd have all my friends stuffing them into the bags because it was the one place that campus safety wasn't inspecting as we brought it in. So we ended up being the pack mule for all the oranges.
Oh,
it was really funny.
It was so funny because when we used to play Union College all the time. And so we peppered their goalie the first game of the year. And then we went back to Union just mid-year or late. It was my freshman year. And they threw everything but the kitchen sink at me. I can remember getting hit by Timberland boots and squash and eggplants and all that. But as I dove into the back of the net trying to hide, I was like, well, yeah, I'm getting what I deserve. I'll take it for all the Hamilton fans who come to the rink.
There you go. That's awesome. So then you become a Disney employee. Do you have to go through cast member training no, in the Disney family?
No, well, I think, Michael Eisner was great. He was, his boys loved hockey, played hockey. And I think that was one of the big perks of him deciding to talk to Bruce McNall up the street with the LA Kings and decide to have an expansion team. But he was great, but he didn't realize that hockey players were different than the regular employees and cast members. Guys are long hair and facial hair and the whole thing. And I can remember our very first meeting the summer after we all got taken in the expansion draft. We all flew out to Anaheim and we're at Disney Hotel, and Mr. Eisner comes in and he starts talking about being clean shaven and haircuts. And our coach, Ron Wilson at the time, went up, tugged on his sleeve and said, Michael, they don't do that. We don't do that. And he was like, what? So fortunately we didn't have to toe the line of the same kind of grooming as the other cast members. But
That's funny.
I'll tell you, one of the greatest perks is that because we were employees and cast members, we got the Disney Silver Pass, which was a pass that you could get into Disneyland 365 days a year. You didn't pay for a thing. You flashed a pass. You could bring in, I think, 2 or 3 guests with you. And after I got married and had our daughter, we would show up and go on one ride. Instead of being there for 8 hours or whatever, we'd go in with our Silver Pass, go to Alice in Wonderland or the Teacups or whatever it was. And then we'd wait in line, go on one ride and not feel bad about leaving after an hour. So
That's
it was a great perk. I miss that perk today.
I know. I'm jealous. I would love that. That's funny. And if I remember, I mean, they put the Disney marketing machine behind it and were really pumping the jerseys and had you guys parades and so forth. Sure. Like they knew what they were doing.
They sold hockey out in Southern California really well. A couple things didn't work out, with the, they really went into family entertainment. And so they had some stuff in the first couple weeks of the season that kind of they realized was not really hockey appropriate. You had a lot of stuff on the Jumbotron that was, Tinkerbell when somebody scored. And, we had this guy called the Iceman, and he was dressed in like a blue ice leotard playing the electric guitar in the stands. And then, of course, we had the debacle of Wild Wing catching fire, diving through a flamed hoop. So there was some things that didn't go as well, but they really did embrace it. I mean, the Mighty Ducks were great for the NHL, and it brought a lot of family into the game, and we were on parades, on floats, going down Main Street in Disneyland, and in our jerseys and waving to people, and people having absolutely no idea who we were. They're like, God, you guys are really big and old to have been in that movie. Like, not in the movie. We're actually a real team. We're a brand new team. So, it took a little while for the locals who weren't, diehard hockey fans to kind of catch on. But we had a lot of great support from the community early on. A lot of hockey fans that had to be LA Kings fans because they were just transplants out here, and that was really their only local team. And once we came into Orange County, there was a lot of Orange County people who were very happy to shed the silver and black of the LA Kings. And we were a little bit different color, we were eggplant and teal. But they really did stand behind us, and we had sellouts for years, which was really fun.
So one of the things I realized quickly living in LA was, the difference between, Orange County sports fans and LA sports fans. And they really embraced, teams like the Ducks and were passionate about it. And it was something I never realized living in the East Coast and then being out there and seeing, I had a lot of coworkers that would commute up from Orange County, and man, when the Ducks were playing, they were all in.
Yeah. It's, LA is, you think about, the Dodgers and the Lakers and the Kings, and they are a different breed. For a visiting player to go up to LA to play, whether it's the old Great Western Forum or, now the Staples Center, really intimidating because they're just mean. I guess that's the only way that, the Kings fans are mean. They're brutal, and there's no love lost because, you're 45 miles separated, and you want to have some sort of bragging rights. And it's always been ironic because either the Kings were really good and they kind of swept the season series, or the Ducks were. Like, it's only been one time in 25 years that the Kings and the Ducks made the playoffs and faced off against each other. Mm-hmm. And that was, it took a long time. I was well retired by the time that happened, but it was always kind of funny. But it's always been a great rivalry since the first year. And, of course, having Wayne Gretzky up the street, to start the rivalry was got the great one. And you're going to play 6 times a year, and you want to not get embarrassed by him. And so there was a lot of fisticuffs just trying to prove that we belonged early on.
Yeah. Imagine it would feel pretty good stonewalling him even just once, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I do remember the first time I played against him, I was in St. Louis, and he was with Edmonton, and came to the front of the net, and it was a big crash, and like everybody ended up on top of me, and and I look up, and I mean, there's Wayne looking right at me, and he's like, "Are you okay, kid?" And I'm like, "Yes, Mr. Gretzky." And he just checked me. He's like, "Come on." He's like, "Kid." He's like, "Call me Wayne." And it's just one of those, one of those small, great moments that, if you're not living it, you wouldn't believe it. And he's like, "God," he's like, "Mr. Gretzky, no way. Call me Wayne."
That's
so,
amazing.
Okay. That's, I will. I'll call you Wayne from now on.
That's amazing. How many, so when you get into the league, how many Hamilton friends are bugging you for tickets and stories and trying to ride the wave with you as much as possible?
It was really kind of one of the greatest parts of my career. Even if I was in the minors traveling and Hamilton teammates or just Hamilton friends were in those cities that you could catch up with. And it was great. And if I rolled into Boston or New York, the guys I played with would certainly be there. Obviously family and other friends too, but it was always great to see the guys I played with or were just part of the hockey community. And I got hit up. Fortunately, like the cell phones weren't really prominent like they are now. I fear for the guys now, where people are texting them incessantly about, "Hey, can you get me, give me 5 tickets? Can you get me 25 tickets? Can you get me whatever?" And but it was always great to be able to catch up and have some time, after the game, before going to the team bus, if you were heading out or whatever, just to say hello and thank them for coming. And I owe a lot of beers to a lot of guys that I played with, guys who blocked shots and, did all the things to help me get to where I got to. And, but it's certainly very special. I would see, during warmups, I'd see guys with, Hamilton hockey t-shirts or Hamilton stuff on and Hamilton toques and whatever, just to make sure that I saw them as we warmed up. And, super special. And, probably like, Chicago, Boston, New York were probably the biggest turnouts for the Hamilton crew.
Yeah. I living in Boston now, it struck me what a hockey town this really is. I mean, I always knew they like it, but man, the moment I knew for sure this was a hockey town was I was at a Red Sox game and was sitting up above the camera bay on the first baseline, and almost between every pitch, if this guy wasn't live on camera, especially between innings, the little monitor on his camera, he'd switch it over to a Bruins playoff game. The camera guy's sitting there watching the Bruins.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is a hockey town.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, now that I'm on the other side of the camera doing what I do now, it's so funny because we'll see our stage manager and we'll be doing the Ducks game and she'll flip on the Angels game. So it's kind of this, because, like, what's going on across, because you can literally from the Honda Center look right across, and then the ballpark is right across the street, Angel Stadium. So
yeah,
there's a lot of great stuff. But yeah, doesn't surprise me in Boston that cameraman would be doing that checkup on the Bees.
What's the transition like to go from playing to being on the other side and then being a member of the media?
Well, as you can probably tell, that I have a hard time talking to people. So my gift of gab, as my dad would say, has served me well over my life. And I love to talk to people. I think I'm super personable, and I've been around the camera my whole career. And so it was kind of interesting. It was fun. It was a little bit, it was just different because instead of you being the one being interviewed, you get to kind of, talk more about the game. You get to interview players, have them come to the set, and, get to be back in the locker room in the morning. Now, this COVID thing and whatever happens after this, I'm sure things will change with the kind of protocols for the teams. But for the last 6 seasons that I've done this, just being an analyst on the desk for the pregame and postgame show, it's great to be back in the locker room, talking to the goalies, talking to the players, and, kind of having that feeling like, kind of like I'm back. It's like, it's as close as you can get to playing without having to put your body through the paces again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've really enjoyed it. There certainly were, some technical things when I first started, because they basically hired me and I was on the air like a couple days later, and didn't really give me any pointers. Said, "Don't be afraid to look at the camera." And I said, "Okay." So I'm pretty sure I stared at the camera, and I didn't know. And there's all this, so you got the little earbud in, and so the producers are talking to you, which a lot of times people don't know that there's any communication. And so I'm listening to the traffic, and there's all these buzzwords that I don't really know what they mean. And so half the time I'm still looking at the camera, and the host is like tapping me going, dude, we're not on camera anymore. And I'm like, well, how do you know when? He goes, well, they'll tell you this. And I go, oh, okay. So a little bit was a little transition with that. And I think they had probably a little more fun with me than they were supposed to, but it was really pretty easy to make the transition. And I mean, I love talking about hockey. So, I work with Brian Hayward, who's another former goaltender from the NHL, who's been doing the Ducks game analyst job for, 26 years now. And so I've known Brian prior to that. And then certainly after all these years. So he's been a great guy to lean on and, ask questions early on to say like, what can I say? What can I say? What controversial stuff do we talk about? And he's like, listen, the only thing you can do is speculate, especially on injuries. So that's the thing that's ingrained in my head is that if there's an injury and I know that it's probably a knee injury, Fox doesn't want us to speculate that, hey, Corey Perry looks like he just blew out his knee, because if it's not, then it looks terrible. So,
sure.
But along the way, it's been great. I've gotten a lot of help, a lot of great feedback from Fox and from the people I work with, and hope to do it for a lot longer. It's really been a lot of fun.
Do you struggle at all with being critical of the team, but doing your job, but as a Duck yourself and someone who I imagine is still involved with the organization in some capacity, is there a line you find yourself having to toe a little bit?
Well, yeah, I think anytime, you want to be more positive about what's going on, and
sure.
I think they all expect that if there's mistakes made, that you can point out the mistakes. I think as a former player, I mean, I'm a little sensitive to having mistakes that I made be talked about incessantly and, being pointed out by the analyst over and over and over again. So I think
sure.
that line of, educated fans know if the goaltender made a bad move, or if a defenseman or forward, didn't get a puck deep, or didn't back check, didn't, take his man. So there is a fine line of being, honest and critiquing the game and analyzing the game. But certainly not throwing the team that you work for and the players under the bus, because you're going to see those guys in the locker room next time you walk in, and, they've got family and friends and wives at home or whatever going, hey, when you see Guy next time, you tell him, hey, cut you some slack. So, So it's a little bit of a dance, but, I think it's gone well. I mean, and sometimes if you do say something that's a little too controversial, either your producer will tell you or the GM will tell the producer, and he'll let me know for sure.
Yeah.
But all in all, I mean, the thing is that you're all on the same page, or we're all trying to promote the team that's playing, but at the end of the day, you don't want to be, glossing over a whole bunch of stuff that are mistakes, especially if you're in a rut and, teams losing games. I mean, you have to try to find the silver lining, but you also have to make sure that, this is what the guys aren't doing right. I'm sure the coach is going to address it, and you kind of go down that path.
I mean, if you're there as an analyst and to say what you see as a former player and a bit of an expert on that, fans expect to hear an analysis of what what you're seeing. So, you want to see that. And I think fans would know if you're not being authentic and just being a homer, right? Oh,
yeah. And they're not afraid to tell you on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I don't know, whatever else is out there, right? I mean, you sit there at the, at the desk, everybody's got these, right? And so I'm keeping up with scores from other, out of town games. And so you have that, and then you'll be like, my Twitter's blowing up. What's going on? So you go on there and you're like, tell it like it is. You're like, okay, I'm going to put that down. And I'll look at that after the game. But they are. I mean, fans, educated fans are pretty critical, and they want you to tell the truth.
You engage on social media with all that?
I try to be very cautious. I try not to be confrontational. If somebody makes a great point, I tweet them back and say, yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You can never win any kind of internet battle with somebody who just wants to make things bad for you.
Right.
So, I mean, I tried taking it in stride, and, there's a great block button on this thing that you can eventually, which I think I maybe have done it one time. And, but I think the fans are generally, if I think you're good to them, they're usually good to you. And that's kind of my little mantra.
Right. Are you, so you mentioned, recruiting Evan. Are you still involved with the Hamilton program much?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Rob Haberbush and try to keep up on the state of the game with recruitment. I'm always happy to make a phone call on Hamilton's behalf and his behalf if there's recruits that he's interested in. And a lot of it is just sharing my story. It's not trying to oversell them on, hey, Hamilton's the greatest place. You shouldn't go to Middlebury, or whatever. I just say, listen, this is why I chose Hamilton, and Hamilton worked for me. I got my degree. I met my future wife. I was able to move on and play, minor league hockey, then in the NHL. And I mean, so I try to explain to him, how and why and where I got to Hamilton and why it was good for me. And, with Evan, he was a kid who was exactly like me, where he was getting late interest from Division I teams, and he had already been to Hamilton and loved Hamilton. And, but that pull from Denver University or, Boston College, all of a sudden getting those phone calls late in his recruiting, they're so attractive to say, maybe I can go and play there. I mean, they want me now. And, I think after I had talked to him and just explained where, again, I had said, hey, if you're good enough, scouts are looking everywhere. And it's always easy for a scout to pick the best guy, best goalie in Division I hockey, or the best 25 guys in Division I hockey. But the scouts are trying to find, that diamond in the rough. They want to make a name for themselves, and they want to find a guy that not many people are looking at. And I think that must have resonated with him. And he would have been fine if he went to a Division I school. I'm sure he would have played his way, into a starting role wherever he went. But for Hamilton, I think he's just another great example of being able to. He was a super smart kid, and he did great in the classroom. And so whatever he does post hockey, however long that goes, he'll be fine. And I think, again, that was kind of the sales point, that I'm going to get a great education. I'm going to get a chance to play and start. I mean, he started for all 4 years, 2-time All-American, something that he holds over my head and doesn't let me forget. So,
and as I understand it, I think broke every record you had too. So,
yeah, I haven't gone into all the records, but I mean, I went out and saw him play, a couple times, and we would talk on the phone and talk about different things and preparation, and mostly by the time he got to be a senior, I mean, he frankly was too good to be playing at that level. But it was more about, listen, you can't control the level that you're at, but you can control your level playing, so you can't be like, get lazy and do things where all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I would have stopped at most times. Well, goals up on the board now. I mean, it's too late to say. So I thought he did a really great job of making himself focused for that senior year. And because of that, those were the things that got him noticed by other teams and got him that opportunity afterwards.
You mentioned the education, and hearing you before talk about how you were thinking about your potential career playing out, not going to play without a contract or wanting to finish school. I imagine, as you said, there are a lot of guys that would jump at that chance and just go. Did you feel like, at least early on, that the education helped in navigating the waters of the NHL?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, when you leave college, I mean, you are smarter than when you showed up, that's for sure. And, things that you're put through as a college student, in the classroom or on the ice, or, there's a lot of things that, I mean, you saw it from, your experience that, hey, you're having tough days with your academics and you're trying to grind through that, but yet you have to be prepared to play a hockey game and you're trying to learn balance. And, it's hard. It's hard to be able to juggle all that stuff. So I think, going through that, certainly prepared me to be more well-rounded, be able to prioritize things as I move forward with my career. And, it's kind of funny because I played with a lot of guys who never went to college, so a lot of kids played junior, came right out of junior at 18 and signed their pro contracts, went right to the minors. And, they were never afforded the opportunity to kind of grow up in a controlled environment. You got a roof over your head in college. You've got, commons to go eat all your meals at. So you're really never going to want for anything. You're going to be.
It's a safe place to make mistakes.
It is. Bingo. Yeah, it is. It really is. So, and I think about a lot of the guys that became my friends and teammates that, they were guys who were 20 years old, were married, having children in the minors. And, I was like, I mean, I can't focus on anything except for trying to stop this puck. And so that's where all my time and energy went to. I mean, you had to kind of basically be really selfish with things outside of the game and just say, I don't have time for a lot of that. And, I think that was maybe something I learned in college, being able to say, like, listen, if this is my only chance, then if I don't give it 100%, I'm going to be sitting somewhere a year down the road, kicking myself because, I was too worried about, this or that. And, I didn't have focus in the right place.
Sitting here now, is there anything you wish you had known then?
It's funny. I look back at college all the time, and it's, well, first I wish I had known. I mean, I grew up in Troy, New York, which was cold, but I really wish I knew how much snow Clinton got. That was way more than Troy, New York. It's just brutal, cold, snowy winters walking across campus.
Learning what lake effect snow means is one of the parts of the Hamilton education.
Yeah. It's like, it's beautiful in the summer when you're looking at the school, right? Everything's green and perfect. But I just think that having a daughter just go through college, and you kind of forget about some of the difficult times in college. We were looking through it with rose-colored glasses, my wife and I. Oh, it's the greatest 4 years of your life, and the whole thing, which it is. Probably more so when you're out and you look back. But I just think if someone would have said it's all going to work out, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to work hard, you're going to be disappointed, you're going to be, all these different emotions, throughout 4 years of college. But at the end of it, you're going to come out on the other side a much better person than you were when you showed up as an 18-year-old. And so if I could tell myself that, I might give myself a little bit of slack along the way and not take things as hard as I probably did. But at the end of the day, the results, coach said to me, results, not reasons. So I think they were great results.
Well, you always hear people talk about not forgetting where you've come from. And it's easy to see that Guy has certainly not forgotten where he's come from and still has immense love for Hamilton College. And it was a joy to talk to him. It was a lot of fun. It'll be interesting to see if any of his predictions hold up. Columbus lost that epic 5 overtime game and currently trails in their series 2-1. And then Carolina, another team he said to look out for, they trail Boston in their series. So it'll be interesting to see. Great goalie. Prognosticator? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. My thanks to Guy Hebert for joining us this week. You have been listening to Had I Known on WHCL FM. Had I Known Show on social media. HadIKnown.buzzsprout.com for all previous episodes, and where later today we'll post this episode. And if you want to get in touch with the show, hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Again, hadiknownshow@gmail.com. My thanks, as always, to Dr. Michael Woods for supplying the music on this show. And, as always, Doc is going to play us out. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
Had I Known podcast show on your radio or take it to go.